Ah, fuck, I forgot to get my coffee. Just give me a second. I'm going to come back for 2 seconds. Let me get my coffee and then I will sort stuff out. Give me a sec. I need coffee. Remember that thing I said last time about respecting the precious life seconds of the people who watch you? Hello. I'm never not a hypocrite. Let me just check my sound. I had to pack up all my gear when I went to Broome because I took my stuff with me. And now I'm not entirely confident that everything's working, but it should be okay. So, oh, goodness me. So I'm just doing a quick, I don't know why I would consider quitting the content business. I mean, after all, it's like, totally professional outfit. Anyway, I have my coffee. Good morning. Oh, gosh. Just 1 second. Let me just check that things are working. Okay. No, we're all good. Okay. So it's been a bit of a funny time. It's okay. So you're going a bit fast there, Matt. It's a little bit okay. So I can't. I'm just going to have to. Let me just assume that Matt's talking shit. Okay. Matt is pretending he's on Twitch and 14. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Too much to process. Because I am actually going to try and explain a few bits and pieces, right? Because it's funny because people do actually, I do get messages, believe it or not, in the large amount of algo fucking that I get, I do actually have people contacting me, asking me what I think about like certain things, what I think it's going. And, they don't watch my stuff, but they ask me, right? And people reach out and they ask me where I think things are going. And they're like, oh, it's all breaking, it's all imploding. It's like, well, not really. If you know your internet history, this is just a normal sort of recalibration of things that are going on. If you're across sort of tech, I think what a lot of people are seeing at the moment, right, is a lot of this chaos. And I think Mr. Matt, our favorite, like schizo Matt, our favorite guy, Matt, will validate this, which is that Musk represents a lot of this stuff this is the normal chaos that is involved with being in tech. What we're seeing is that normally you've got a comms team, brand team, IT managers, project managers, a CEO, all those sorts of things. You've got those types of people, those layers that sort of make it look like it's more it's like what we're seeing with Twitter is actually what is a normal Tuesday, a normal day, a normal Monday. Today is a Monday for your average startup. What's unusual about Twitter is that it's actually an established company who have sort of been, shoehorned into sort of this corporate idea of, it's really interesting to see. So we'll go back. I haven't streamed for a while and I've been thinking about quitting entirely because I've been thinking a lot about certain things and what my role is. And unfortunately, let me take a drink. One of the problems that I've got is that, you can't do this and work for someone else because it's just too risky, right? It's just too much risk. It's too much, they're just not compatible with each other. So I need to I really just need to think about, because this is not a monetizable thing. Okay. Yes, I do appreciate the patrons that I have, but I have to also, there comes a point where you just got to face and go, I've got bills to pay. I can't do this. It's not sustainable. I don't have the bandwidth or resources to, do the editing, the scripting, the research, the type of thing that I would want to do in order to produce even weekly content to the standard that I would like. That requires a lot of effort, a lot of things it's basically a full-time job worth of effort just to do one well-scripted, properly researched thing, right? Streaming itself, not profitable, okay? Editing takes a long time. It takes 2 to 3 days. Like every time I decide I'm going to do clips or edit anything, it takes 3 days to go through and find these clips, right? The kind of stuff that I talk about takes research, and I think people take for granted, it's easy to run off at the mouth. It's easy to, have opinions on things, and it's easy to just read other people's work. But if you're actually producing thought and take your job seriously and actually try to do things, correctly, even if I fuck up, I do try to be correct in the moment. Like I misspeak, like that's the nature of a live stream. But at the same time, I try not to make stuff up, right? And I try to make sure that I'm correct. That takes research and time, and it's just not a sustainable thing unless you're making enough to cover the costs, right? And time is a cost. I mean, whether people think that you are, like that's just a fact. Like it's a myth that you can do political commentary and work hard and sustain a job and that not cost you somewhere else. Okay, that's just a myth, and it's just not something that is necessarily sustainable. So I've got to think that through. I need to think about what the next steps are, because part of the assumption when I started doing this was that if I just kept going and I just kept getting better at it, and I just, stayed true, that the algorithms would fix themselves and that it would sort of, come out in the wash after the pandemic, and that, I don't think that that's going to happen. And you need to accept that this is now pay to play, and I can't pay to play. So it's just one of those things where I have to kind of be in a certain world. I have to be in the corporate world, and the corporate world doesn't like opinions, and especially doesn't like women with opinions. And in Perth, times 1,000, there's a multiplier on that, which is that in Perth, they don't like opinions on anything. That is different from, sort of mainstream, corporate, boring, polite, smiling through your teeth, kind of fucking kill yourself shit, okay? Drink down say the line and neck a bottle of wine to get yourself to sleep every night. That's Perth, okay? Every time I have a fucking job in Perth, I end up, like, drinking more. I've got to try not to do that because I can't, but I'm just saying. But, where, yeah. So, I've kind of, you can't do, and it pisses me off, actually, that you can't do, I'm literally just trained to do political commentary, and I'm just doing my job. And somehow doing my job is now considered impolite. It's just, what a weird fucking world we live in at the moment. It's the fact that I am literally just trained to do this thing, and I'm not allowed to do the thing that I have a degree in doing. It's just absolute bizarre land, because it's considered impolite to do basic analysis. It's that's a whole other level of fucked up. But at the end of the day, having the ability to oppose that's a luxury that I don't have. So I don't, opinions, purpose, freedom, that's for rich people. That's for people with, who can grow an audience. That's for people who are useful to a content machine that, doesn't care about the truth or anything like that, right? So that's just where I'm at. And I know it sounds negative, but that is actually just a truth. And the truth is not negative. The truth is the truth, okay? Which is that there is no such real thing as organic anymore. You need to be generic in your thinking. You need to just reproduce the lines. You need to basically just, read from an auto cue, whether literally or figuratively. And, you need to be serving some sort of commercial force in order to be considered useful. Like, that's not new. That's just the world we live in. However, I'm not willing to do the things that I've got to do. So just so you know, that is, where I'm at. I need to figure out, because the problem is that I actually do enjoy it. So I need to figure out how it's going to work. Maybe, but I also hate editing. So, I'm just trying to figure out what the best way forward is for me. The landscape shifted. Okay. And it's funny that we're actually talking about Twitter at the moment, because, Twitter does represent that sort of era where we had, we had a shot at being ourselves. And then obviously that got taken over and gentrified by, various mainstream, thunk piece dickheads. And we had a glimmer of optimism around content, and that you could be authentic and be yourself. And then that got co-opted by brands, and that's sort of where it's heading now. Okay. And I gave it a good run. And I'm still tend to be charitable. So as much as we're making fun of the X thing, and I've got a video coming soon. My son's working on it. That's funny. That's making fun of it, but it's not. It's less X. You know, it's less X-Men, more X-Force, right? That opening scene in Deadpool 2 with X-Force. That's how it feels. It feels like a bit of a train wreck. But I can actually explain what's going on, which is that a lot of this stuff is just tech. But what it is that you're seeing the fact that there is no real veneer. There's no real sort of, he's sort of lost his comms people. He's lost his PR people. His CEO, the CEO's like, oh, what the fuck? Like he's obviously got someone who's just an HR corporate clap lady, right? That's sort of just saying the lines, and it's really weird. I don't know what the fucking strategy is there, which is just like, if you could think of somebody who would be least capable of, it's a very strange decision. But at the same time, I also know, right, that this is a school of thought. Okay, so I also happen to know that there are two different schools of thought, and these tensions are always at odds with each other. And so that's where I'm conflicted, because, like I've said before, like he needs comms people. This is, you don't need all of the comms people. You don't need you need some. This is the sort of the right-wing libertarian brain rot, where they think about this idea where there's no government, or it's like that thinking in black and white and extremes, or that there's no comms people, or that there's no, that you just go straight. So, well, no, you still need a lawyer. You don't need 50 lawyers. You need one or two good lawyers to fucking keep you going. You need comms people. You need to be able to run. You need the humility as a CEO or CTO, whatever the fuck he's calling himself this week. You need the humility as a leader. This comes back to basic sort of leadership stuff in tech. Okay. And this is the kind of content that I prefer to talk about, which is more of the, using the current, this is an example of sort of where we are sort of heading, but also some analysis to show that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay. Which is that you need that, this is the problem around humility, like having that intellectual humility to understand where your gaps are, okay, where, your discipline. I've said this before about engineers. This is an engineer problem. Matt will agree that this is, this is a massive problem in tech, okay. This is a problem that I see getting worse with AI. It is going to happen. It's going to be a massive problem if business leaders, C-level, sort of as heads of IT, don't start acknowledging that there is a big gap. It's the same gap that I've talked about for, most of my career, but became very vocal, a decade ago, which is that you don't know everything. People are not robots. You have gaps. People shit is a discipline and an art in its own right. Conflict resolution, communication, like these things actually are skills that you might think that okay? And you might think that the data paints a full picture, but it doesn't, okay? There's an art to people shit. Okay, there's a real art to it. And especially when in times of change, times of conflict, times where, you've got a clash of schools of thought, like we do with something like the management style at Twitter. Okay. That's like Twitter just represents sort of, it's funny. It's actually that you see the Twitter v Facebook sort of Twitter v, X v Meta, whatever the fuck. I still call it Facebook. That's the thing about rebrands, is that I'm still going to call it Facebook till the day I fucking die. Okay. However, it's, let me think. This represents sort of two different worlds, really worldviews that are somewhat incompatible with each other. And it's that sort of, let me think, sort of move fast, break things idea versus that sort of old school IT manager, corporate, the lawyers, the comms, the layers of bureaucracy, you know, that sort of stuff, right? You got that. And then you've got this sort of disruptor. Let me get my thoughts together. I haven't really, wasn't planning to go down that path. Give me a second. Well, honestly, so if you don't know, so Twitter, I talk about Twitter a lot, and if you know, but basically, in the next, well, he said I just happened to be around on that space where he dropped in and said that it was rebranding to X, like in the next day or so, right? So they're losing the twitter.com bird, they're losing the twitter.com domain, they are running off of x.com. Now, Musk has owned that domain forever. That was one of his initial, he's always sort of wanted to bring about this project. For me, it's very much like, you know, all of us tech people have those projects that were, you know, we envisaged early, we had an idea, and it just kind of parked. We still can't let go of the domain. It's just sort of sitting there, right? And X is that for him, right? But like I said, it's less X-Men and more X-Force at this point. Right? But, and that's it. And so, yeah, so that's what, yeah. So Matt actually says the point. So this is the tensions that we're seeing, okay? And it actually comes back to sort of my trip to Broome, which I've been writing about as well, which is that moving fast and breaking things was good for about 3 years until they broke things that they didn't intend to break. So it's one thing for a fail whale to occur, okay, when it's a fun new app and people are talking about movies, okay. When it's an essential service during an emergency or something that they are presenting as, a source of, high speed, high velocity information, all of that sort of stuff, and a source for news, the implications of breaking things is quite serious. And it's like, well, there is a point where it becomes reckless. And I tend to be on the side of, yes, teams of lawyers getting everything through legal, everything through, because, I've worked in agencies. Having to get everything through legal is a pain in the ass. They're pain in the ass. They're uptight. They're fucking annoying. IT are a buzzkill, okay? And one of the things that we've always said is that, like digital, like one of the big problems that you have in, in digital departments versus IT, which is that they're always trying to fold digital into IT, and IT and digital are somewhat incompatible with each other in certain areas, which is that digital runs off of a, more agile, lean UX, right? And that approach of sort of rapid change, breaking things, learning, iterating. But IT has other pressures because IT has things like cyber security. Okay, they have to have a they have to keep everything like locked down. They can't, they can't just go and change all of these things because everything breaks. There's lots of dependencies, right, in IT, right? You can't just move fast and break things once you get to a certain size. And this is like the fact remains that like it's impossible to transform these organizations without breaking things, even sort of with a 2-year project. And that's the constant. Anyway, I'm talking too much, but I'm waffling. Let me get my thoughts right. So basically, what with Twitter and X, right? Sorry, the chat's actually fucking throwing me off. I can't distract too much. Yeah, I might just have to ignore it because it's just moving too fast and pulling my focus, and I'm falling over my words. It's good to see you, but I can't do that. Okay, so basically, like, I know that it's all fun. Like, it's all fun to like make fun of him for the X. Like, I'm not telling you to shut up. I'm just, it's like I can't engage with it, and it just pulls focus, and it makes me forget my thoughts. It's just an ADD thing. Maybe I should just try harder. So I'm turning it off so I can't see it. Okay. Sorry, Matt. I just can't see it. I'm happy to have a chat after, but like everything I'm trying to say, it leaves my brain the second I see it. So, all right. So people have been asking me about this, right? And obviously the instinct is to be, laughing at it. Right. And also there's another phenomenon, like, which is, this is well studied. Okay? I think, okay, it comes back to what I've been talking about my decision to quit. Because first of all, I can't just do this, and you got to do this. You got to interact with chats, and my brain is not wired for it. So I'm going to have to start doing pre-records. I can't interact without it fucking up my performance. I'm just not trained in that way to do that, and I never will be. It's a disability, so I'm not doing that. I'm happy to interact, but we need to interact. Like it needs to be that. Can't be thinking about what I want to say and all of that prep and all of this other sort of concept stuff and educational content and be doing that. It's just not something that I'm able to do. Okay. Because I wanted to talk a little bit about how, these are not, they're not reckless in the sense that, like, I think this is one of those things where people have a lot of opinions on things, but they don't really dive very deep into like why these things are the way that they are and what might be going on. Now, obviously, I am like resistant to changing an established brand like Twitter. Like Twitter is a powerhouse. It is well established. There is more risk in changing it than, again, this is more the traditional brand manager corporate point of view would be that there is more risk in changing it than there is in not changing it. Okay. But if you actually to take the time to pause and go, okay, let's just reason back from here. Let's go back from what's true, because a lot of this stuff we're doing from the outside. Okay. And, user resistance is a known, established problem. It's well studied. There are words for things. There are concepts for things. And you are going to meet resistance with a certain, with a large number of users are going to fight you every time you make any kind of change, especially a substantial change, okay? So when you're talking about a transformation project, digital transformation project, which is what this is, okay? So that digital transformation project means that it's like a major change in the technology or processes or, some sort of needing a massive realignment and change around the technology that a business uses, okay? Twitter's a tech company. This is a digital transformation project that's pretty much unprecedented. I've said this before, which is that it's an established old tech company that's trying to run like a startup. It's interesting to watch. Not coming from nowhere, okay? And you have to be charitable and go, well, there's 3,000 people in that team still, okay? Musk has done stuff that, against people's, he has achieved. You have to look at what you know. Getting away from this like opinion shit and everyone having their fucking hot takes and everyone deciding that they know how things work. I sit down and I try to go, okay, well, what's his reasoning? What's his thinking? Yes, it's funny. Okay. Yes, I think from the outside, it's a bad idea. But that's user resistance. That's because I'm attached to the product. I use the product. I don't understand the reasoning for why he's doing it. But, there's also a school of thought where this is well studied. Twitter study data. They know what we want. They know the data. They have the insights to know how much resistance they would get. Again, if we're being charitable, they understand what their strategy is. They understand their target market. Okay. For a digital transformation project to succeed, you need executive buy-in. Like most transformation, fails because it doesn't have buy-in from the top. Whereas here, it has all of those, things, right? It has that buy-in, right? It's coming from the top down and it's going through the organization. So that's one check. Okay, good. All right. So there's some things that are actually being done well. There's other things that are not being done so well, which is the arrogance of assuming that you don't need good comms to do this. And this is where him being his own, Elon Musk being his own comms department is a really risky thing. Okay. But he's working on a hypothesis that you don't need these layers and that you can work out loud and that people will, it's basically lean UX. He's doing, it's risky. It's a high risk project, but it's high stakes. Like the company's losing money, so it's high stakes. So it's really, in his defense, it's something where he can actually use it. He's got a substantial enough user base, and also the haters are still there. They're still sitting there. It will change. The rebrand is just another thing where he stays in the news cycle and people make fun of him, and these diehards act like weird ass simps, and but at the end of the day, like, they're still driving traffic to Twitter. People will still use it, and we know this. Like, this is okay. So again, there's two schools of thought. One of them is a myth, somewhat of a myth, not really a. Okay, let me correct that. So I've talked about the eBay thing before, right? Which is when eBay first launched, they had that yellow background, okay, on the website. If you were around the early days of eBay, it was the blue text on yellow background. So eBay have gone through quite a few rebrands since then, and now they've got it. It's funny now because I've worked with that palette before. They've got like literally hundreds of combinations now. It's pretty funny. But at the time, it was just sort of blue, red, the primary colors, eBay, right? And so they had the yellow background and blue text. And so they decided that, they would just change the website background to white. Okay, so users had a fit. So this is a normal thing, users having a fit. They don't want it. They want the yellow back. They want the white. Told you about this before, okay, where they just basically just went, okay, then we'll make it yellow. Okay, we'll change it back at the user's request. And then they just gradually just reduced it down, reduced, gradually graded it down back to white. And eventually the users didn't notice. And then it was white, and it's the background that you see today. So that's one of those sort of gold standard UX things, which is you don't do sudden changes with users, but you can do tiny changes and they won't notice, right? That's where a big field of sort of, that interaction. But there's also, again, that's also not true in many other cases where you can, that's somewhat held to be a gold standard, but at the same time, there is a new school of thought around UX, which was that sometimes the rapid change actually creates that it's random enough and it sort of piques people's curiosity, so they want to go and see what's happening, and you gamify it and create Easter eggs. If you can create mystery and adventure and have people sort of poking through things to try and find bugs or try to find them, send them on a treasure hunt, so to speak, right? Then that will actually engage them more. So, and that's sort of, that whole Willy Wonka sort of, let them give them enough rope, and, and you'll see that sort of unfolding on X now with these crypto bros and these fucking, oh my God, these independent like accounts that are reporting like they think they're journalists. And it's like, yeah, this is obvious to anyone who knows anything. But, so you'll see them sort of, he's sort of working through that. He's leveraging those guys and they're like, dare I say, autism, to go, and Elon Stanness to try and, discuss and, he's kind of crowdsourcing his design, which again, I think is a bad idea for something like Twitter, because it is it's a sort of mission critical kind of product. But at the same time, right, it's not an invalid school of thought. That's my point. My point is that you can dial it back, and you can choose to be an asshole, and you can choose to just go, yeah, and reject things out of hand, reject. And that's no, do the corporate IT manager thing and say no to everything. Okay. You can't do that, because they make the corporate IT have been the fucking bane of my existence for my whole career, because they wouldn't let you do simple things. Okay, simple, common sense things. And it's like, yeah, but you're actually just being a curmudgeon. There comes a point where you are being obstructive, or you're obstructing the process. You're holding things back. And, you've got those competing demands, because you've got a CMO or a CDO or someone like that who's trying to implement certain things. But IT at the time have been nothing but a gatekeeper, nothing but an obstruction to the progress. And then the CDO, the problem with is that the digital officer always gets in trouble for not meeting their outcomes, because they don't have the support of those in the organization to facilitate what they need, because they're at odds with each other. Talked about the cybersecurity stuff. I've talked about the stability of the platform. I've talked about, the whole, the waterfall school of thought. All the old sort of, project management schools of thought are about milestones and process and Gantt charts and, all of that sort of risk profiles, all risk management and all that sort of stuff, right? And that's a valid thing, but that can also become obstructionist and authoritarian, and like actually just, and we're seeing that with this model being imposed on something like Twitter, which had that sort of lean startup, move fast, break things, try things, abandon things, like Facebook and Meta have managed to sort of navigate that a little more. Somehow they, because of the sheer speed and sheer scope and size, they can create these little sort of micro startups within the big corporation. But for the most part, these things, what you're seeing is these tensions sort of come. These are things that are largely invisible because corporate comms keep that hidden, okay, first of all. And also change managers within the organization keep that sort of, keep that process ticking along and keep it communicated with those that are affected. So stakeholder management and communications and all that sort of stuff, that's really important. And that's the thing that Twitter, he's fired a lot of those people, which is the people that can actually sit down. What he's done effectively is basically outsource that to his idiot crypto bros and people like me, where I actually sit there and I'm like, you should be hiring a comms person to say, this is what is the strategy, this is my reasoning, this is my thought process, this is what our plan is, because there are going to be large numbers of people who, if they are, especially advertisers and those sorts of things, and those sorts of people, or people who need to back a platform for, the long term, they need, because the thing about, they need to know what's going on because they need to form their plans, okay? If you're a marketer or a CMO, this is just another fuck up the digital officer stuff again. Fuck up the marketing team, and then the marketing team get the blame for everything. We get the blame for fucking everything. Everyone, the CEO is not being happy with the sales because the salespeople won't make calls. So it's the marketer's fault because we're not, whatever. Any digital projects, IT, because IT is the block. Marketers are constantly sitting with the blocks. Okay, no, I'm talking about the CMO, right? When you're always relegated to the kids' table in terms of like your role. Like you don't have the real authority of a CFO or CIO or the head or head of IT or anything like that. You got the C-level title, but you are relegated to middle manager. You're not actually given any real ability to strategically like pull and kick heads and go, CFO, you need to sign off on this invoice for this agency, right? CIO, get your IT department to fucking whitelist some of these things. Blah, blah, blah. Like the CMO just ends up being the dumping ground for all this shit, okay? And those things are important, right? They end up being blocked by legal, blocked by like CFO, like that, blocked by the staff. Then you're dealing with that, digital is hard, okay? It's what I'm trying to say. And so, Twitter's got the same problem, okay? Because they're still like an old tech company. All right, so, but now I can look at your stuff because that was the stuff I was trying to get out, which is that, there's people with opinions where they're just reacting, but that is it's a concept called user resistance, okay? And that's a well-known, it's not very widely studied. It should be more studied, but in UX, it's well known that, and also in change management and like digital transformation, these are all sort of IT like sub-disciplines, okay? And it's basically the people shit, okay? And the people shit is always the thing that makes projects live or die, okay? And so while I'm not necessarily opposed to X, I have an emotional attachment to Twitter, the brand. I have, but that's my user resistance. I have an emotional attachment to that brand. However, I also have substantive like things to say about this because first of all, so the risk of changing is higher than the benefit, I think, in this instance, okay? Because the reason why you might change your branding is because, this is a subjective thing, okay? Which is that you might perceive that the Twitter brand is garbage, okay? Or that it's like, I would say that it's probably more, do you know what I think it is? This is why my studying tech law is like, but I think it's actually just a structural brand change to step away from the fucking lawsuits that are here. But that's just me. I don't know. You can't sue someone if they don't exist, right? Man, I'm wondering out loud that. I just thought of it then. But like there's lots of reasons why you would change the brand, and some of them is just to Phoenix, just to like wind down the company and start it and spin a different company, because there's lawsuits coming, big ass lawsuits coming. That's one simple reason, and you can't, or that structurally the actual entity itself is so with liabilities. I mean, there is a good chance that that's the reason, okay? Because there is no good brand reason to get rid of. There's no good brand reason to get rid of Twitter. That's what I find really weird about this. I mean, I can't again, you got to look at from different lenses. And I think that the legal lens here is probably the one that's most likely, which is that if you're paying attention to the cases and the court, like what's going on in the district courts particularly, and with his employees and all of the stuff, and like fucking even I've considered it, like, and regulations and fines, and I have a feeling that it might just be a ninja move to get out of all of these lawsuits. Just dismantle the fucking, you can't, yeah. So I'm sure that there's legal reasons for this as well as much, and economic ones as much as anything else, right? We don't know this. We're just reverse engineering from behind. Sorry, from outside. Reverse engineering from behind. In Twitter's case, yes. But it's so that there's that aspect, right? But also like the fact that this is fairly normal for digital transformation projects, but you just don't see it, right? So it's more like that because they don't have comms or anything like that, there's no real, but what they should be doing is communicating with users. One thing that I think is risky is that he's alienating users like me who are long on the platform and leaving it to crypto bros and fucking weirdos and like Doge weirdos and, those sorts of people to cheer on, it doesn't make any sense that you would have those people be doing your comms for you. They're idiots. At least have like they're not qualified for anything and they don't work in tech. They're just crypto bros and they don't actually work in anything. They don't. But it's like, do they have anyone who's actually made a product like doing the comms? Like it is very strange, right? And I think that it's that sort of pendulum swing where he's decided that all comms is bad, all branding, yeah. That's the thing that I'm sort of confused about. So, I find it really interesting, but at the same time, like, I'm thinking about this in real time, and I also haven't streamed in a while, so I'm a little bit but my frustration with this stuff is that people just knee jerk and just talk shit, and they just, yeah, okay, yeah, stupid. The impulse is to just make fun of it, or like, it's like, well, that's not really a mature way to handle things in tech, because there's people who, like, you need some adults in the room, but I don't understand why nobody is saying, okay, well, yeah, this is ridiculous and it's funny and it's probably going to be a disaster, but it's not a disaster because Elon's an idiot. That's the thing it's like, this is the thing that frustrates me in general, is that it's possible to be critical without lying or misrepresenting things or making stupid claims like that he's stupid. It's like, well, he's not. He just doesn't share the same worldview as you, and he has a higher pain threshold. And it's very easy, if you are good faith, to see where he's coming from on this stuff. It's easy to see that, okay? I personally don't agree with it. But a lot of that is because of my own emotional attachment to Twitter, right? I think that as a brand, and also because I don't understand, I'm not his lawyer. Okay, I'm not his counsel. I don't know that maybe his counsel have decided, that he needs to get rid of this fucking company quick smart because it's about to be bankrupted by all of the laws and regulations and everything that's coming up. There's lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. I don't think you understand how much, right? But it's just okay, so Matthew has Elon said jokingly that Twitter was absolute crap. He hasn't. But he has said that, I mean, again, this is just a matter of knowing sort of the details, and also Twitter as a product and where it sits within that whole ecosystem of it's not. I don't think anyone would ever say that Twitter was crap. Twitter was compromised by corporate interests and these sort of bureaucrats and the people, the lawyers and the policy people and the governance people and the comms people and all of those sorts of the desk murderers, right? And they were sort of, it was too heavy in that area. He got rid of those, but I think that he leans more towards going completely direct. But there's a recklessness there. Now that depends on how. And he's a tech bro. I've said this before. Tech bros have a high pain threshold for risk, okay? But they also have this blind spot where they don't consider the ethical implications or the ethical impact of what they're actually doing. There is a whole mindset around this is that whole mindset, which is that making money is the only thing, and if you're making money, you're right, and if you're not making money, you're wrong, and how you make money doesn't matter as much as that you make money. And that's just their whole fucking narrative. And this whole thing, it's like, well, it's just hustle, 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 hustle. Let's not think about any of the other factors, okay? That's why I had to quit, because this is just so pervasive in tech that moving fast and breaking things and getting $1 billion is their only focus, that you end up with someone like Trump for president. You end up with massive, with mass like mental health crisis. You end up with all of these fucking micro cults forming. You end up with platform manipulation and people being victimized and these things being weaponized and used by various bad actors, unethically, while you turn a blind eye because you're just making money and make breaking things. They don't, it's like you need to be taking the social impact of things that you are doing more seriously. And he's unfortunately empowered the tech bros who have this same fucking brainworm that, that it's like, I don't understand why he does, like he needs, and I thought that like Linda might provide that balance, but she seems to just be a corporate, like cardboard cutout corporate person who doesn't even care about the impact. She just cares about getting advertisers and corporate nonsense. So, I mean, it's frustrating. I got to say, like, it is frustrating to watch because for me, yes, that's the point. Yeah, that's actually so they're not invested in the planet because they're working to leave it. And they also, I went into this fucking, like, what's it called? Paradise engineering. Holy shitballs. I got into that fucking rabbit hole not recently, which is paradise engineering. It's basically like the transhumanist stuff, which is basically that they're reducing us down to hormones and simulated experiences, and basically they can bring about paradise for humanity by just hijacking us and just giving us a cocktail of hormones, happy hormones and simulated experiences, and we live in bliss. Like, that's horrifying to me. That's Brave New World shit. And this is a lot of these guys want to bring that shit about. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just their worldview taken to its extreme sort of like level, okay? And that stuff, whilst exciting and interesting and that curiosity, it needs brakes on it, because this is, the capacity to do massive, that's effectively eugenics. It's effective, you're walking into genocidal shit there, where it's very terrifying stuff. And so, and again, I'm not saying that that's what's happening. And this is the problem with like a lot of the shallow analysis, which is that I'm not going to be telling you that this is a certainty but those people exist. The people who believe in this worldview and want to bring about that utopia, they exist. Okay. Whether there's a conspiracy to do that, that's the next leap. But there are people who have this ideology and worldview that want to see that happen and think that's a good thing. Those people should not have political power or enough influence to be able to do that, okay? And especially not enough access to social platforms with, like, nudges and various other things to make it so that you're signing up to Neuralink, like, without thinking. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, you need people like me to go, hey, that's a bad idea. Have you thought about this, right? Well, Matt said, yeah, it is actually that, but the problem is that they will then, if you actually say that this ideology exists, right, that it's that you're a conspiracy theorist. It's like, well, no, I'm saying like I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm saying that there's 8 billion people in this world. There's people, a lot of very bored, autistic fucking tech bros who I've met who would very much like to not be on this planet and exist in like, a virtual world that doesn't actually exist. Now, whether or not you agree with that, that's fine. You can do that, but you shouldn't be making those decisions without being open about what kind of and I think this is the thing about the political process or the policy process or something like that, which is that and this is what is fundamentally democratic, which is that the broader population should understand, and this is what, if you're campaigning politically, right, this is something that you should be maybe keeping in front of mind when you're doing it. When you're trying to get people to vote for you, you really should be making sure that you are selling them the kind of world that you want to bring about. This is the difference between an activist who is a single issue, short-sighted, fucking can't see the wood for the trees bullshit that ends up funneling people to the far right over a single issue, versus somebody who is, a leader or, a political party or, whatever. You're a large tent of like lots of different interests, okay? Ideally, in an ideal world, you should be trying to sell people on the world that you want to bring about. Okay, you should be trying to sell people on that, and in a transparent way, go, this is how I want the world to be. Okay, this is my view of the world, and these are the policies that I would love to bring about. Will you vote for me? And you ask them for their vote. Okay, you are transparent, and you go, and that's my old fucking social democratic like view of things, which is that ideally, for a proper social contract to exist, there needs to be that conversation between me and I go, I want to see a world where children don't go hungry, where people are not fucked with without their consent, where people are free to pursue their dreams, they live long, happy lives, all of that sort of stuff, okay? Now, there's going to be some challenges along the way and all of that, and this is the policies that I need to bring that into place. Here's my plan for how I'm going to do that. Here's the risks, here's the stakeholders. Will you vote for me? Join me. That's ideally how the democratic process should work. So a lot of this stuff is just not democratic at all in the way that, because they're not being transparent about the world that they want to bring about, right? And that's the thing, is that there's a lack of transparency about their end goal. And that's like fundamentally anti-democratic. Right? And that's where it's like, well, and you can have those views. And it's the same thing with like, Christian fundamentalists or, any fundamentalism. This is a form of tech fundamentalism, right? It's just another fundamentalism, which is that it basically is, well, you are free to have your religious beliefs. That's fine. But the state is not the place where you bring that about. Okay, the state is not the place where you bring about your beliefs, and that's not your tool. That is a tool for everybody to bring about a world where we can coexist and negotiate, and you exist, and you can have your fucking little cult over there, and so long as you're not hurting anybody, okay. And obviously we can negotiate what that means and what that looks like and what hurting people is and all those sorts of things. That's a constant and ongoing conversation about what that is, what's public, private, not private. That's what the courts are for. But, the state is not there to impose your worldview on any one group, especially the population. And tech have this thing where they, obviously are trying to impose their religion of fucking technology and, this paradise engineering nonsense, okay, onto us, and I don't like it. I go, that's kind of cool, be interesting. I'd like to upload myself. That'd be interesting. But at the same time, I'm not going to fucking support anything that does that to people without their consent and without them knowing that it's being done, right? And so tech is a tool, exactly, and it's not. But there's people who think that, and Elon Musk pretty much sits in that crew, as do, I mean, not as much as like Sam Altman and like those Google guys and a few other people. They seem to be very much in this sort of school of thought where, I worry about that stuff. But it's not a conspiracy theory. You need to get away from being worried about being called a conspiracy theorist. It's like, well, yeah, there's fucking conspiracies going on. Shut the fuck up. Why are you such an idiot that you call everyone a there we go. We should just say, okay then, uncritical thinker. Like, the person who turns around calling everyone conspiracy theorists is like dumb. It means you're not paying attention. because it's not analysis is not a conspiracy theory. But yeah, there's some batshit stuff there, but that's going to happen. People are allowed to have batshit ideas. It's fun, makes life interesting. People are allowed to think things, funnily enough. Okay. But yeah, don't religion tech. It doesn't answer prayers, except ChatGPT, but let's not. Yeah, I agree. And it's just funny. But anyway, so, but I also want to try and be charitable, because I think that there's this broader, like, straw manning of everything. And it's, obviously this is a boneheaded decision, because if I was a Twitter CMO, or not CMO, but like communications person, whatever the fuck their job title is, if I had his ear, I would say, like, on balance, like, I don't think that this is a good idea, but I don't have access to the information that he does. Like, you need to remember, these are things that we know, which is that, first of all, Twitter knows everything. They have data on us, right? They know roughly, like, their user experience design, their design department, they make just, I'll give them credit. They know they're pretty good, right? They're not just making stuff up like they're like an independent journalist on Substack. They're actually they're actually practitioners in the field, and they have the data. So they have access to data that I don't. Okay, first of all, so how users interact with the platform, what they want. They got their all of the emails that they get, like support requests. They understand. They have that history. They have all of that data available to them that I don't have. Okay, so first of all, they might be making a more calculated decision than I'm looking at it from the outside, right? And it's the same thing with, they might have been already talking to advertisers, because remember that tech operates under NDAs a lot as well, which is that they may have been talking to advertisers and vendors and people like that for a long time about this, and have communicated a plan. They just might not be the people that are reporting on it, or they might not be communicating it to those people who don't need to be on the know. And maybe there's a whole marketing strategy around having them react so that you get in the news cycle and everyone's mad, and then you prove them wrong. Like, that's a viable thing. And so for me, and this is where it comes back to that approach, the way that I want people to think, which is to always try to, people have been throwing around this word lately, but still manning it, but also, assuming, not jumping to conclusions based on your small amount of information, but going and assuming that other adults know what they aren't idiots, okay? Assuming that, people might know things that you don't know, that there might be gaps in your knowledge, okay? And in this instance, I admit that I'm coming from the outside. I haven't signed an NDA with Twitter. I could actually be, if I was in a major agency, I could be in on the know. If I was in the media buying, like, they could have told people like 2 months ago that this was happening, or had a seminar or whatever, but you can't say it. Like, these things happen. Like, things are not always, front and center, right? Sometimes you just, it's not public, okay? And it's also, right, what was I going to say? It's obviously a viable marketing strategy to stay in the headlines with, Matt Binder and, and Vice and Vox and all of those, and CNN and NYT and New York Times and all those people being cut out of the process. But, it's a viable marketing strategy to have people looking at the train wreck. Okay. That's what Trump did perfectly, and got and Musk obviously leverages the same thing, which is to stay in the headlines. It's the Kardashians, right? Same Kardashians model, stay in the headlines no matter what. Doesn't matter what it is, just fucking stay in it and check out. I'm saying it is a viable marketing strategy. I'm not saying it's necessarily a strategy that I think is a good one for this particular case, but like I said, you can actually criticize and do analysis and say, without lying, without making stuff up. There's plenty to criticize without making things up, like he's an idiot, or he doesn't know what he's doing, or that he's in over his head, or that he's doing it because he's desperate. All these stupid they're child's analysis of things. Okay, in reality, this is a conflict between two schools of thought. Right, I find it personally very interesting because it's a digital transformation project like this has never been achieved or accomplished in public like this. It's very tricky. It's very risky. And there's a lot of people who see risk as stupid. Like there's a lot of people I've had, like there's a lot of people who see risk as reckless. Any risk, they can't stand any risk. That's what IT managers do. They can't handle any risk at all, and they will delay the project until there is zero risk. That's the IT manager mindset of old school, where it's that waterfall model. You must get rid of every bug, every risk, pass through every UAT, everything like that before you launch. And it's like, well, that's not really a realistic way to approach things, okay? But neither is breaking shit without talking to anybody and just going, without testing and stuff, right? There's a middle ground there. And that's where, it's springtime for it. Yeah. But the thing is, it's fairly, honestly, it's not really, I think it's funny and it's fun to meme. And I think it's my personal opinion is that I don't like it. I'm resisting it. That's user resistance. User resistance is a known phenomenon. Users resist, like getting people, one of the biggest reasons that projects fail in IT is not because the tech's not good, not because of, it's because people resist change and people won't use it. And it's a very complex thing. There's a lot of reasons for it. Some of it comes down to comms. Some of it comes down to, training. Some of it comes down to, like people really don't like breaking habits and patterns and all of those sorts of things, right? If you've ever tried to quit Twitter, you'll know that it's a hard thing to break, right? These habits. And also you're seeing that with Threads, it's a phenomenon. I can't remember the name of it. But you see, I was actually going to talk about this in another thing, but because I like to know the word I'm talking about. There's a phenomenon where Matt might know, someone might know actually, one of you, where Threads is seeing that right now, where users have a certain expectation. So with Twitter, they've been trained in a certain expectation, right? As a certain and then but when what will happen is because they've been trained in that experience. Right, like the fucking pigeons that the Skinner box fucking pigeons that we are, and we're using Twitter. But then they go over to another one. They instantly expect the same experience from Threads as they got from Twitter, or they're very unhappy. And you'll see that play out. Same thing with Blue Sky, and like you'll see Taylor Lorenz moaning about features that aren't on Mastodon. Like people are very resistant to change. They're more resistant than you'd think. However, there is an exception to that, which is if you can pique their curiosity just enough that they will stay engaged and they will take the time to learn. And a big part of what I've tried to do over the last few years before I sort of formalized my content or did anything sort of serious was try to A/B test and figure out that sweet spot, that sweet where you can communicate at sort of a basic level and explain things that are very complex. But try to get it so that people are at least sort of, led to the water. You don't have to make them, you can't make people drink, but how do you get people to drink is, the constant question. Like we can do lots of leading. You can't make, you can't get them to actually be curious, right? Yeah. UX, it's just left my brain, but people like that. It's just consistency, right? People like that consistency of experience. However, there are exceptions. It's very important to not make generalizations. And this is the problem, I think, with them. This is why we have a problem with UX marketing business, being run by people who are dumb. Because what happens is, because people who are dumb outnumber us, what they do is they'll take these good concepts, right? Such as maybe a pattern interrupt, right? Or like a pop-up. Let's use a pop-up for an example. And what they'll do is they'll take that and they'll turn it into a law and they'll turn it into a rule of thumb. They don't understand that the science, they will parrot the science behind it. They'll go, people, that X numbers of signups, blah, 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 blah. But they won't understand, they don't have the sort of full discipline understanding, right? Or the full understanding of the reasoning behind that rule and that there are always exceptions to that rule, okay? I think that's the difference between sort of, your 101 Dunning-Kruger effect understanding of something like UX to somebody who who is sort of a practitioner for years and years and years and years and years and years, who knows that these things are, yes, they are good patterns to start with, but there are exceptions and there are specific use cases where you shouldn't use them. Then you've got other complicating factors like accessibility and, like the political sort of context around a lot of this stuff now, which is a whole new context. That's the area that I want to do more courses in, which is that the landscape has shifted and it impacts some of these rules and laws of UX that don't apply because people's emotional state is different when they're using certain things. And that's really important because it does affect how they will interact with the platform. So in the case of Twitter, X, right? Changing to X. At the end of the day, it's a great product. Okay. People's heightened, it's 50-50 on whether it's a good idea or not. First of all, I'm willing to surrender to the fact that I don't have the data. I don't have access to the data. I don't know Elon Musk. I haven't talked to Elon Musk. I can extrapolate from the outside that I imagine that there are many things are true at once, which is that he subscribes to a certain worldview, but I also think that he subscribes to a certain worldview at the expense of some others that have something to say, such as around, like I said, that libertarian, like run it all, automate it all. He's not good with the people shit. That's one thing that, again, that we know. There's a lot of evidence that he's just not good at the people shit, okay? And that's my biggest concern because he's surrounded himself with other people who don't prioritize the people shit. I thought Linda might. She just seems like she's a corporate person who doesn't care about the people shit too. She just says she does. Okay. But gamification it's still a good idea. And gamification is just basically, it's like that slot machine shit. But at the same time, like, I have a feeling that the excitement, it's definitely interesting in terms of people will want to play and break and see what breaks. And like people will come and look at a train wreck. And can he push through the train wreck and come out the other side? This is the fuck around, find out strategy where he may, I don't know. And it's interesting but there's people who can't deal with I don't know, right? There's people who I'm quite comfortable with this idea that things will work out and that this goes in cycles. And it's good because I've noticed that Twitter's like, they seem to be pushing the right buttons in other, so they're kind of forcing innovation on Facebook end, right? And they're forcing innovation on, various fronts where people were sort of lagging before. They kind of got too comfortable and too complacent with their products, right? So, I think we're actually just going to see sort of a Web3 push that was necessary. We saw this same Web3, the same thing happened with the Web2. Like Web1, we're all restricted, like, brochureware websites went from brochureware to sort of Ajax. Remember Ajax being the buzzword? And sort of, those Web2 that were more interactive, there was resistance then too, okay? And so people, when news sites sort of went from being static brochureware websites to interactive with comments, we had the same stuff where it was like, oh, fuck, we don't want comments. And then, social media took over and there was that resistance to move. There's always that resistance, right? And sometimes it is, honestly, Matt, I think that, and this is why there's lots of competing forces, right? This is why I'm frustrated that he is not communicating this better, okay? I'm frustrated. The thing that frustrates me is who he is using to distill his ideas because the average user isn't listening. Like, your average person someone like, okay, let's use Matt as an example, right? Matt would be your average person who would probably be sympathetic to Musk and what he's thinking. Like, we were talking about this yesterday about, moving fast and breaking things and how, sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes it's necessary. And but you would ordinarily, and someone like me, would be ordinarily on side and on board. We would be in a corporate setting with a digital transformation project or whatever you want to call it. You would have key stakeholders who would be a canary in the mine for whether the project had buy-in from everyone else or not. Someone like me or like Matt, or your sort of other average users who aren't necessarily in the inner circle and they aren't necessarily in the they're not an antagonist, they're not an active opponent of the project, right? You've got these, but there's a lot, again, this is just stakeholder shit, but if if we're not on side, that's a sign that you've got a comms problem, you've got a stakeholder management problem. Because I'm inclined to go, look, I get where you're coming from, but why? Like, what's going on? Like, why are you doing the? You're making boneheaded decisions, and I think at some point, just trust me, bro, I'm the boss is not a good way to handle and not alienate people who would ordinarily be on side with you. It's one thing if you've got people who are never going to like be on side with you or like you or gonna everything you say, like Matt Binder, everything's going to be spun that he's a bad guy and evil and stupid and you know his farts don't, you know, he smells bad and you know, oh my gosh, you know, all that sort of stuff, and he's, you know, whatever. Okay, but like people who are on the fence and inclined to defend Elon Musk, right? That's something that I think that those people are falling away. And that's where you've got a problem with buy-in. And that's where, again, there is some that, you know, again, there's research around this, which is that a big failure point for a lot of these projects is that you lose those people. Okay, you lose the people that are on the fence and inclined to be charitable. And so, you know, again, it's just Twitter, but you know, there are comms problems and I don't understand it. So yeah, okay. Yeah, so no, but you know what I'm saying, Matt, about how we are of a generation and a user base that gets it. Like you and I are inclined to understand with a little bit. I'm sure you know that what I'm saying, like reverse engineering, some of what he's doing. We kind of go, yeah, all right, he's doing this. This is a weirdly experimental building parachute on the way down, Roadrunner fucking project, right? I get it. And there's lots of potential reasons that aren't, you know, we also acknowledge that there's a lot of people who just hate Elon Musk no matter what. And my knee jerk is to defend him because I hate those people, right? Because they're idiots. But, and you know, it's the same thing with, you know, my role has always been to sort of smooth over things. And like IT being obstructionist and everyone yelling at IT, but it's like, no, IT has something valid to say, which is that you need to factor this in and cyber and security. And, you know, that you can't just go and like upload scripts randomly to things because that fucks everything up to this young developer who's got spaghetti code and he's hungry and he wants to innovate. But it's like, no, but there's a process that you need to follow so that we don't fuck everything up. And that's sort of the art and science part of, you know, these types of the people shit that seems to be missing. And I think that's the problem that he's got, which is that I can't see anybody who's doing that. Or maybe they're trying and failing. And I think that may be more the picture, right? Which is that he's just an unmanageable fucking night person to work for, and people are doing their best. Let's not forget, there's still 3,000 people working there. It doesn't, you know, like there's lots of information. There's a lot of very smart people still working there, right? And that's just, I think this is one of my frustrations with these sort of bros, is that they think that they're smarter than the collective efforts of 3,500 people who've been working at Twitter for years and years and years and years and years. You don't. I'm saying I am only speaking from my experience. I'm from the outside. I'm reverse engineering. I'm going based on what, you know, but, you know, that's highly variable. There are some things that we just know are true, okay, which is that Musk is difficult to work with, okay, but he has had some hits, some misses, right? But he does have an army of people who hate him. He has an army of people who fucking, like, don't question anything, and he's got to basically, you know, fan and anti-fans all around him, right? And like, but I think the grey area here is what's the constructive criticism, and is he hearing the constructive criticism part? And that's where it becomes unclear, because, you know, everyone is either hating or loving or hating or loving, and it's like, well, no, there's actually, like, there's users who are on the fence. Most everyday users are like, well, what the fuck? What's going on? Why has my app changed? Why am I suddenly being rate limited? Twitter's broken. They don't know what's going on. They're just average users. And it's like, okay, well, you know, like there seems like there's no real, and this is what the CEO should be in charge of. I don't understand why she's going and talking, like, my God, she's a walking LinkedIn profile. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. And it's like, oh Oh my God. This is where it's like, well, there's valid reasons. And I always choose to go, okay, well, let's just assume that they're grown-ups and they know what they're doing to an extent, that they are like every grown-up and every engineer I've ever fucking met has blind spots, and that there is a gap in that organization. We also know that 70, 75, 80% of digital transformation projects fail, okay? And especially 100% of them fail if you don't have good change management, okay? What he's doing is risky. It is somewhat unprecedented. I can't think of a tech company that's done this and survived. And survived is the key thing. But there might, because there is also some valid, I can understand the situation where, you know, they might need to just disappear the company. They might need to make it like protect the, you know, roll it into a new entity so that it can't be fucking sued and all that stuff, and they get a fresh start. You know, there's lots of valid. Again, this is the thing where it's like, well, if you just, I don't understand why these people have jobs writing and producing content. Anyone can just regurgitate, I hate, or well, Elon Musk is an idiot, or Elon Musk is a genius. Okay, well, how about Elon Musk is a human being with too much money and flawed and smart at some things, not so smart at others, and he's surrounded by 3,000 people who happen to know quite a lot more than you do and I do, and maybe we go, all right, well, let's try and see if I can explain this to people for free and do Elon Musk's job for him, trying to sort of explain and reverse engineer this stuff, because they won't be transparent, because for some reason they don't feel the need to be transparent, because it seems to be but again, I'm just going to assume that you have a strategy. You shouldn't assume that people have a strategy, because when you work with corporations for any length of time, you'll start to realize how few fucking strategies anyone actually has. But, you know, let's assume that they've at least given some thought to a back of napkin strategy here, and you can, you know, I can see how staying relevant and, you know, playing the fail son like thing works really well to keep him in the news and to keep Twitter news, and it also keeps people coming back. And that's that spectacle. While users don't like change, people are going to come and check it out. They're going to come and see what's happening. They're going to see what's broken. Like, even I'm just like, fuck, they're changing the domain to x.com and twitter.com, the whole app experience. Fuck me. Like, if you're a developer, you understand like changing the domain to a new thing. And like the SSL certificate's not even live. If you go to x.com, it's fucking dead. And it's like, holy fuck, this is going to be a disaster.gif. But I'm looking, I'm going, I'm curious, I'm checking. There's a lot of people sitting there waiting, right? And that's what I find really interesting. It's like, well, okay, what's the strategy? Is the strategy to keep people coming back and interested and invested in the result and cheering him on, much like he did with Tesla when people were fucking mocking him and just build out in the open as much as you possibly can? Maybe. But my problem is that, you know, obviously some of those, again, and also the people that will resist, there are people who can't bear any level of risk, and they will see any sort of level of risk. Sorry, my hair's, since I surgery, my hair's fallen out, so I'm going to have like lots of this shit going on for a while until it grows back out, but that's all right. Just letting you know, it looks ridiculous. I hate it. Anyway, there's people, like a lot of people, especially people who've been in corporate for a very long time, especially the old IT crew or policy people or lawyers or whatever. There's people who are very, very risk averse, okay? Not because being risk averse I said adverse, I meant averse. But they're risk averse, but they're risk averse in a very in a way that's counterproductive, okay? So that's, you know, your accountants and your lawyers, and, you know, they have a role to play. Okay, you're sort of conservative waterfall IT project managers. You're sort of old school security people who are used to keeping things up with tape and glue and never being given enough resources or whatever for cybersecurity, because everyone's going and, installing shit and installing scripts and fucking changing code without telling anybody, or, or making fucking decisions that actually require a process. Like, that's a common thing. They have a role to play, but when they have too much power in an organization, they can be obstruction. They can obstruct the the overall project and make it fail, right? They can be a severe failure point in any kind of so you got to balance those things and have those conversations, right? So it's like there's lots and lots of competing forces there, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that would be like, well, if you've ever tried to migrate a domain, there's lots of fucking things that go wrong, even with a small website. It's this seems like a very fast change for 6 months for a 20-year-old app. I'm not sure. Like, it might just it's interesting. I think a lot of it is just your pain tolerance level. Like, for me, I think because I stayed in a small agency and I never really kind of, I found corporate process very limiting. But there are those people who need that, working in a corporation, a massive corporation in tech, is very, very, very slow. It's slower than you would like. And there are processes that exist that exist for a reason. They might seem stupid when this is something that in my career you get some young dickhead who has been in tech for 3 years, and he just goes, why can't you just rewrite the code thing? Why can't you just rewrite it? Oh, there's this new framework. And then it's like, well, okay. So when you're doing sort of solution architecture work, where you're just trying to choose a solution, right? Part of the reason why people go with WordPress or with PHP is because you can get developers, right? It might not be the superior platform, okay? It might not be the superior technology. It might have problems. It's got its own set of problems. But .NET developers, right? They're more expensive. They're $300 an hour. WordPress dev, you can get them for $50. Okay, that's underpaying, but I'm saying, theoretically, you can get them. That won't be good, but you can get it. There's other factors that go into these decisions. And at the corporate level, it's like, well, you need to be onboarded as a vendor. You need to go through all of this stuff. Going through InfoSec process for a major corporation is massive, because you put the organization at risk. Okay. Being an agency and onboarded into via InfoSec, information security process, is massive, and it seems stupid. I've got to fill out all this admin and tell them about my fucking security process, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually have something like the Medibank private leak, where all of people's data is leaked because of an agency running a fucking stupid, the Optus one was the example of that, where there was a DNS pointing to something, and then someone was able. So you need to be on top of those holes. That process exists for a reason, and corporations have those processes in place for a reason. Sometimes they exist. Sometimes that reason is we don't know why it's there. Shit breaks when we don't do it. Sometimes it is that simple, because organizations, there is that sort of debt there, right? That's just going to happen. But but this is that thing where I do worry that Musk is doing that. I'm a young startup hot shit developer person going in and breaking things that may actually expose users to, risk. And it's risky, right? It's it's one of those things where you can't tell, and a lot of this does just come down to you need to be able to ask him, and I can't ask him. I'd love to have a conversation where I just said, come on, not just preaching to your crypto bros in cryptic fucking language, okay? Not just saying what you think people want to hear. Have you got this sorted? What's your plan? What's your roadmap? What process? What do you need? Okay, where are the gaps? Okay. I just want to know what the plan is. And I think that's the problem, is that there hasn't been transparency around the plan. And Linda's job should be that. Not just cheering on and saying bullshit platitudes, but actually saying, here's the plan. That should be her job. She's the head project manager. That's what the CEO is. They are the head of the company. And, Musk is not good at that. Okay, so they really need someone to be going, here's the plan. And I know that, obviously the various Twitter accounts are saying these things and, but it's just, they're failing. But it's just, there's a gap. There's an absolute gap there in terms of your average user knowing what's going on up against all of these things, and also their emotional state and their trust in Twitter is already low. So they've already got to win back users. User resistance is already a known thing. It's like, well, okay, let's see how we go. That said, I mean, does it really matter? Still just, who cares about Twitter? There is always that overarching who gives a shit about Twitter. Problem is that we just don't have anywhere else to go, right? I think that there would be a net good in Twitter, in all Threads, Twitter, all those things going away and just having one fucking feed for everything. But, and also this is just a pressure point because, I've talked about this in previous streams as well where, it's going to change anyway. Everything's going to be federated and it'll just be which platform you're on and they all talk to each other. Eventually, it'll be like email. It'll just be, oh, well, I'm using this client versus that client. That's really the way that it's going, is that they're just going to be trying to sell a front end, an experience for, a client that talks to other clients. I'm annoyed with the antagonism between Meta and Twitter because they should be working together to decentralize rather than fucking doing this thing. But they're trying to, they should all be broken up. That's another thing about X is that that's the opposite direction to how it should be going, which is that they should be broken up, not consolidating, right? So that's a whole other thing. But anyway, I've been talking for too long, and I think I waffled for too long. Now we can interact, but what's the BBC? Oh no, oh God, yeah. Oh geez, yeah. So yeah, actually, Matthew said my biggest concern is that it will make Google searches difficult. That was one of the things. There's a software called Make.com and Integromat. They changed their name to Make. And now every time I want to look up how to do a certain thing in Make, you can't. It's like Make, integrate, blah, blah, blah. And it's like comes to Zapier results. It's like, I want to do it in Make. And so you have to do Integromat, Make, blah, blah, blah. Like knowledge base. And it's like, you got to think these things. It's like, you got to think it through. Me. Anyway, Facebook.com is F.com anyway. If you ever hit F, it finishes, autocompletes. Doesn't matter. Hit T, Twitter.com is autocorrect. It doesn't matter. But anyway, I'm going to go. I've talked too long and I've got to get ready for a fucking thing. All right. Anyway, I've got to go and remind myself about how I'm a failure and all those things. And I'll be back. I don't know when I'll be back. But I just wanted to get this out of the way and talk about it. But yeah, have a good day. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm not going to say become a patron because I don't know if you're going to get value for money for a while. But we'll see how we go. If anything, I think I'm on the way out, but we'll see how we go. Okay. I'll see if I can find the way through all of this stuff. I don't know. Probably just not for me. Anyway, I love you. Take care. And I'll be back some other time.
What a load of old shit!
Elon!
All right. Take care. Bye.